Hey, 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 welcome to Eat Out at Home, the podcast. This is the place for foodies who want to learn how to cook better, eat healthier, dine together, and enjoy some gourmet every day. I'm your host, Chef Evelyn, and on this podcast, I share with you my best chef secrets that I've learned from teaching thousands of people how to cook via online and in-person cooking classes, healthy eating workshops, and from my well-seasoned career in the culinary field. Listen, I've been cooking for over 20 years, so I know my way around the kitchen. If you're ready to spice things up in that department, then just consider me your secret ingredient. So, if you're ready, sit back, relax, grab a snack, and let's dive right in. Hey, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Eat Out at Home, the podcast. And today I want to talk about 3 ways to save time in the kitchen. Because I know for a lot of people, when it comes to cooking at home, even when it comes to myself, one of the biggest complaints or one of the biggest obstacles can be this idea that cooking at home takes up a lot of time. And so I want to share with you 3 things that would really help you reduce the amount of time you're spending in the kitchen. And sometimes it's not necessarily about the recipe. So I know, buzzwords like 30-minute meals or 15-minute whatever are very, very popular. And that is helpful if, the recipe doesn't take 4 hours to simmer or doesn't have to marinate overnight. And that's great. So I'm not going to be addressing that because yes, the recipe that you choose is part of the equation, but you don't necessarily have to have something that's designated as a 30-minute meal or ready in 15 minutes or less to have a shorter cook time in the kitchen or just a shorter time, less time surrounded around getting meals done and ready for yourself and for your family. So one of the biggest overlooked things I think when it comes to time and saving time in the kitchen is the quality of the tools that you have. And I love to give this example about cutting grass. Okay, so rock with me. So if you're listening to this and you're not driving or operating heavy machinery, rock with me here. So I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine a giant field of grass, right? It's spring, early summer. There's no trees. There's no houses. It's just this expansive piece of land with the grass, up to your knees, and it's just swaying in the wind, right? And, there's a nice cool breeze, the sun is shining, and all you can see is this grass. And you have to cut the grass. So you look down to your right, and on a table, you see 3 different things, okay? You see some kindergarten shears, scissors, where you can, the kind that's got the little crinkle edges and where you can cut out cute shapes on construction paper. After that, you have a machete, okay, that you probably have seen in some kind of jungle movie or Jumanji or something like that. And then right next to the table, you have a riding lawnmower. And so your task is to cut this field in as short of time as possible. Now, all of these tools will cut the grass, the kindergarten scissors, the machete, and the riding lawnmower. But as you can tell where this analogy is going, obviously the riding lawnmower is the most efficient. So that same thing applies in the kitchen. So if you don't have quality tools, if you don't have the right tools for the right job, then cooking in your kitchen is going to take longer. If your knives aren't sharp and you don't have quality knives, if you don't have quality cookware, right? If you don't know how to use things properly, it's going to take you longer just to slice up a tomato just because you don't have a quality knife. And so let me know in the comments of this podcast, wherever you are listening, if you want me to compile a list together of my recommended kitchen tools and specifically like what brands and things like that. Like, I don't think you need a knife block set with 15 different knives. I actually think you only need 3, at best 4 quality knives in your kitchen, and to view them as an investment, as an appliance, no different than you would view your oven or your stove or your refrigerator. You need quality cookware. If your cookware doesn't conduct heat well and one side gets a little hotter than the other, or it's too thin, or it's too flimsy, or it's too cheap, cooking is going to take a long time. So I want you to think about how having the right tool for the right job is so important, and having quality tools for the right job is so important when it comes to saving time in the kitchen. And I always want you to go back to that picture of, can you imagine yourself trying to cut this field with the cute little zigzag scissors that you would give a kindergartner? You'd be there forever. You'd get it done. It probably wouldn't be as great as you would like. And here's the thing, you could upgrade to a machete, right? But think about how physically demanding that is for you to be going through and whacking left and right trying to cut down this really, really tall grass. And think about how much easier it would be to get on the riding lawnmower and ride around and get the grass cut. So right tools for the right job and quality tools for the right job will help you save time in the kitchen. The second thing that I think is not discussed a lot when it comes to saving time in the kitchen, outside of just, you just need a recipe that has fewer ingredients and, only takes 20 minutes to cook, because I can cook a curry in 30 minutes and it have 15 ingredients in it, right? The thing that is overlooked tremendously is technique, is cooking technique. If you have not ever taken like a knife skills class, either online or at like a local cooking school, if you do not know how to cook, right? If you haven't mastered just the basics of searing, boiling, grazing, knife skills, roasting, things like that, then yes, cooking is going to take much longer. I will say this, most of the time, what I've heard over the years from teaching cooking classes for over 16 years now is that people are like, it's all the prep. It's all of the prep. Well, prep is usually chopping and measuring. And this is why meal kit companies are so popular, because people have not just mastered basic cooking skills of measuring properly and also knife skills and cooking. And so they're like, they need somebody to do part of the work for them. And there's nothing wrong with that, actually. But if you want to save time and some money from not necessarily having to use meal kit companies, I think they're a great backup resource. Then, take a couple of online cooking classes, take a couple of technique-based cooking classes in person, not just necessarily date nights. I'm talking about classes that are going to help you improve your skills. So like a knife skills class, or a pan sauces class, or a grilling class that is going to teach you about a cooking skill and not just be like a delicious menu and a fun night out. There's nothing wrong with those classes. I love those classes. I've taught those classes for almost a decade and a half. So I'm a huge fan of those. But when it comes to saving time in the kitchen, it's really about mastering the basics. You don't have to become a professional chef. You don't have to be a food blogger or any of that. But you do need to know how to move through the kitchen, and so that the prep doesn't take as long as you may have experienced in the past. Now, when it comes to the third thing, this is a little bit of a broader tip, and I'll try to break it down in specifics. But the third way to save time when you're cooking in the kitchen is about having better time management. Now, here's what I mean. One of the skills that I've learned over the years from when I was a personal chef, from catering, from doing cooking classes, and just obviously cooking at home myself, is really knowing what order to go in to make my time in the kitchen the most efficient, right? So I'm starting with the thing that's going to take the longest. I'm moving to the thing that's going to be very quick. I'm mise en placing all of my ingredients. If I'm chopping an onion for this, I'm also chopping an onion for that. And that comes with practice, that comes with time. But even taking a minute or two to just mentally outline, okay, I'm creating these, this main dish and these two sides, then what is the best order of execution for me to do this in, right? This is also time management around shopping. I try to avoid shopping at the grocery store on the busiest days of the week and the busiest times. I'm also not trying to shop and cook and plan all on the same day. And so, thinking through like not only just what order am I going to cook it in, but if I'm going to store any of this, already having that in mind and cleaning as I go so that it doesn't feel like there's this huge amount of work. It's like I just did all the work to do the cooking. Now I've got to do all the work to do the cleaning. It's like combining it all together. And so knowing how to move around the kitchen efficiently and manage your time around the kitchen efficiently is really, really going to save you time. I know it's a little bit meta there, right? To say that in order to save time, you've got to manage time better, but it's really thinking about what's the most efficient way. Sometimes we just get in the kitchen and we just start going and it's like, oh, I'm working on this and I probably should have started this first. And like, I'll give you an example. Just last night, I was making some stewed lamb and some harissa potatoes and some veggies on the side, right? Simple meal, no big deal. But this was lamb stew meat. And I knew that I needed to brown it. I knew that it needed to simmer for a while. And I also knew that, okay, my potatoes and things like that are going to take a little bit longer than the vegetables. So obviously my first order of operations is to let's get this meat browned and seasoned and ready to go and stewing. And so while it's stewing, now I can go on to the potatoes. And then while the potatoes are cooking, let me go on to the veg, right? But if I would have went in there and just said, well, let me just go ahead and get the veg out the way and sit it to the side. And then let me just go ahead and get the potatoes done. So I know that they'll be ready to go when I'm ready to go, and then I'll do the lamb. Well, then at that point, you could have your vegetable done and your potatoes on their way to being done, and then be sitting around and waiting for the lamb to be done, right? So it's just something to take in consideration that even if you're just taking like 60 seconds to just have a quick plan of action of, this is going to take the longest, this is whatever, it's going to save you time because you go through in the order operations, everything comes out together at a time where it's like, okay, if I'm serving this meal hot, let's say you're not doing meal prep, it's like, and I want it all to come together at the dinner table at the same time. I've done that. And meanwhile, I'm cleaning as I go so that when my meal is over, all I have is the dishes that I've eaten on to either wash or throw into the dishwasher, right? So just something to think about. You may, and these tips may seem simple, and they may seem obvious, but sometimes it's like, yeah, you know what? I really do need to pay attention to, am I going to the grocery store on the busiest day at the busiest time? And so it's making my shopping trip unnecessarily long and therefore causing me a little bit of frustration because what could have been a 15, 20, 30-minute max grocery shopping trip is now an hour and 15 minutes long. It's taking me forever to prep because, my knife is dull and I'm trying to get through this tomato and I'm trying to get through this bell pepper, or I'm trying to cut up this onion, but because my knife isn't sharp, it's making my eyes water and I've got to stop every couple of seconds to rinse my hands and rinse my eyes or whatever. And, the leaves aren't coming off the herbs and it's not cutting all the way through. And, I've got to MacGyver with the pan that I'm using because it doesn't heat properly or it's kind of tilted and bent and all that kind of stuff. All of those things add up. Even if you think, oh, I'm only missing out on, 5 minutes on each one of those tasks. Well, then that's 20 minutes. If it's an extra 5 minutes at the grocery store and it's an extra 5 minutes on, your prep time, and it's an extra 5 minutes because you don't have the best technique, and it's an extra 5 minutes because you didn't take, 1 minute to kind of plan out your order of operations. Well, then that's an extra 20 minutes every single time over the course of a month, over the course of a week, over the course of a year. And that is why cooking at home can seem exhausting. And people are just like, I just want to do it. It's so exhausting. It's so time consuming. It doesn't have to be. So yes, you could keep searching for 30-minute meals and they will continue to be longer than 30 minutes until you address these 3 things, which is better tools, better technique, and better time management. So with that being said, let me know, what are some things that you do in the kitchen to help you save time? What are some tools and techniques that you use that have been a lifesaver for you, so that we can share it with the other listeners? And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go over to iTunes and give us a review, and tag me on social media with a screenshot in your stories if you enjoyed this episode. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, head on over to chefevelyn.com and join the Inside Dish. That's the place where you and I can stay connected, and where I can send you culinary inspiration, occasional recipes, and some food for thought. And if you're curious about what I'm cooking in between episodes, then follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook for some more delicious behind the scenes. Don't forget to jump on over to iTunes and leave a review. And remember, it's absolutely okay to enjoy some gourmet every day. I'll see you next time.